All right, anytime you don't have circuit protection, you're doing a lot of risk. And if anybody's ever seen any wires that burned up, you can have a piece of wire this long inside the cab, and if the insulation burns off of it, it'll fill the whole cab up with poison smoke. Really bad news. So in order to protect the circuit, you got to put something in there that will fail when if a short circuit happens. Right? That makes sense. So you don't actually want to have all that. And that sounds like something that would be really silly, but you got right here fusible link. And a fusible link is half-line insulation is usually 1 or 2 gauges smaller than the circuit is protected. You'll see them coming off the starter because a lot of the time the starter is going to be the junction where they actually hook the, well, you know, we were talking about the Expedition over there. Whenever the the alternator wire goes over there and it hooks up to the same post on that little solenoid where the big battery wire goes, and the wire that's leaving that big alternator post is going to make it back to the battery, typically the shortest way possible. GM likes to put it down here on the starter. You know, Ford, if it's got the solenoid up on the firewall, they'll put it there. And that's how it is. It's kind of like a slow blow fuse, these fusible links are. And it burns it too, but the insulation is supposed to remain intact rather than burn. And if it's separated on the inside, you can't just look at it and tell. You're going to have to stretch it. If it'll stretch, it's burned in two, right? All right, it protects automotive wire harness, and it doesn't just blow like a fuse. Like I say, it takes a really, really strong short, a lot of current to blow a fusible link. And that 12 gauge fuse link is probably going to be protecting a 10 gauge wire or something. All right, so you got heavy current circuits. Here's what I was talking about earlier. You see this here battery is hooked up to that part of the starter, and the alternator is hooked to here, and they'll have a fusible link right here, typically. And there'll be a fusible link for other places too. Now here's the Pontiac story. No alternator output after the other shop did the work. People down at the bottom of the hill. They actually put it back together, and they put this wire right here, which was coming from the alternator, on this post down here. Is that a problem? And never make it to the battery that way, would it?
Nope.
Okay, and that's the one, this red Pontiac that worked on out there. And so when we got in there and looked at it and saw that they had just put it to the one that was easy to get to, it makes a difference which one you put it on, even though they both look almost just alike, right? So you're always going to put it on that one right there if you've got a big fusible link wire in there. You never put anything else except that under that one. Some of them will have a hard copper strap going down in there. Now, easily replaceable glass fuses, like these right here, is when I first started working on cars, that's what cars had on them, was glass fuses. Some of the Volkswagens had funky looking. That's what fuse panel looked like when I first started. And this is a 73 Impala, and those are the kind of cars that was out there. And that's me sitting on my Volkswagen Bug, right, that was a 58 Volkswagen Bug. We shaved 125 thousandths off the cylinder head on that thing. My dad was, had a shop. And boy, that thing looked like a Porsche. It was a ragged looking thing, but it would fly. But that's what the old Volkswagen fuses looked like. Probably noticed we lived in a sepia tone world back in those days. Back in those days, everything was a sepia tone. It wasn't even in color. You notice all them pictures are like that? No, actually, that's not the way it was. This is the pictures have gotten rotten. Right? This is my possum hunting bug. All right. Now, this is a little personal trivia. That's my 55 Chevy pickup, a homemade buggy. This is the first car I drove legally. I was driving that when I was 14 up and down the road without a driver's license. Hope they don't come get me on that. Anyway, and in summer of '74, I got this Ford 65 Ford Custom, and it was 9 years old then. I sold that car for $200. It still ran real good. But anyway,
What?
yeah, and well, that's what cars cost back then. I mean, you could buy a 9-year-old Chevy pickup for $150 because they, sitting there. But anyway, there's a 69 LTD, and when I graduated from high school, that's what I was driving then. I was just about always had 2 or 3 cars at a time. I always had something to drive. When your dad owns a shop, you never short on anything to drive. But back in the lesson, here's 1979 Trans Am, 80 Trans Am. See, it went from 79 to 80. See how much change there was? And that's when everything changed. All of them had fuses like this. Now they got all kinds of funky other fuses like you never thought that you'd ever see it before. Now see all these fusible links. See all them fusible links coming off that thing? That's the junction that Ford was using, and they would feed everything off of that. And fusible links were all different gauges. They'd even give you the color of them and all that sort of thing. And the major circuits were fed by those. Now then came the fuse panel under the hood. You know, we didn't have fuse panels under the hood back in the day. The only fuse panels under the car. Now, you may have 2 under the hood and 3 or 4 in the car. Some of them have one under the back seat, and they have one on the right side of the dash and on the left side of the dash, and just all over the place. You got to make sure you find all the fuse panels when you're working on one. And so, find them all. Well, we got to have a fuse panel under the dash called IP fuse panel. If you see IP fuse panel, that's instrument panel fuse panel. Sometimes there's 2 and so on and so forth. So you got to manage the loads. That's Nick right there. The number of active loads increases. The alternator's got to man up, and it's got to handle all that stuff. There's a price to pay. The drag placed on the serpentine belt increases as the alternator works harder. You ever seen a fuse like that? 2-sided fuse. One side or the other can blow, but you got to replace the whole fuse. That's sort of a raw deal, isn't it? All right. There's a bunch more. I've got a box with some of those in there in case we ever have to have any, but half of it can blow and leave the other half conductive. Now the smart junction box, they're going to find another place we're going to find another place to stuff a computer. So let's just put one in the fuse box. You know what I mean? That's what they do. The smart junction box is a hub in the electrical system wheel. In other words, not steering wheel, system wheel. It has a lot of spokes. All the power windows, door locks, all the lighting, instrumentation, even the entertainment system, which for years was a standalone system. And so what you had used to, you know, when Ford first came out with what they might call a body computer, they call it a generic electronic module or a central timer module. You know, was the cheaper version of that. And it basically started doing stuff like, it was doing neat stuff like in 1995 on the Windstar, had a little gem module in there, and it handled the timing for everything. Like your seatbelt light would come on when you was driving down the road, or any light that would come on and go off after a certain amount of time. Or it would handle the wipers, you know, the interval wipers. And so if you were setting your interval wipers on the lowest setting, and maybe they're wiping every 5 seconds, when you're driving down the road, it knew how fast you were going, and it would make them wipe every 2 seconds when you're driving down the road. It would also, some of the things nowadays will change the radio volume a little bit, turn it up a little bit when you're driving. When you hit a certain speed, it'll turn off the interior lights, even if a door switch is saying they ought to be on, because they know this guy ain't driving 40 miles an hour with the doors open, right? Okay. The smart junction box, you're going to find another place to put it in there. Current, it combines fuses, relays, microcontroller, layers of interconnection into an integrated assembly. Big old thing. Now my pickup truck, my 07 F-150 doesn't have a smart junction box on it, but it's got an inside fuse panel that's pretty big and, you know, heavy duty. Got lots and lots of fuses in it. But just because you see a great big fuse panel doesn't mean you have a smart junction box, okay? All right. And having those colorful mini fuses that can blow if something short out. You know, these pretty little fuses right here, how cute they are and all that. What I like to do though, when I'm looking at a circuit that's not working, is I'm going to go find exactly which fuse I need to look at instead of just checking them all, because you'll miss something if you're just randomly checking fuses. You may hit it, you may not. All right, now today's power distribution centers need to provide power to a lot of electronic devices. They got internal relays that you can't change the relay, they're just built into the box. Talked about that a little bit before. Look at that right there. Scrap if dropped. I got one over there somewhere. I'd have to put my hand on it. I should have it ready to wave in front of the camera. And it's a smart junction box, and it says if you drop it from 20 centimeters, which ain't very far, then it's junk. You got to replace it. In other words, if you're holding it in your hand and you drop it, and it hits the floor after 20, you know, I notice around here whenever somebody drops something and they bust it, I'll say, what happened to this? They don't say, I dropped it. You know what they say? They say, it hit the floor. That sounds like it's the part's fault, you know, like if the camshaft is screwed up or something. All right. So, these look like regular relays on this Camry. See the EFI relay, the C-open relay, light control circuit, the horn relay. They're built into the box. You got to replace the box. If you discover that a relay is bad, like your EFI relay, you got to replace the whole dadgum box. Get used to that. Now, some of the problems with smart junction boxes on Fords can be addressed by reflashing. You can actually reflash the smart junction box. You see that reflashing we did over there the other day on that Duramax? Whenever I was reflashing that, was y'all over when I was doing it, some of y'all? I was reflashing that body computer on that thing. But he went and got one and put it in there and reflashed it. But anyway, is a lot more common than it ought to be because it's a shock sensitive design, you know. Reprogramming usually requires IDS scan tool, but we got one of those here. So some concerns, one or more brake lights is stuck on all the time. Battery drains quickly when the car sits for a few days. Headlights are on bright all the time. Turn signals or parking lights are stuck. Power windows don't work. Instrument cluster malfunctions. Dash lights quit working. Hey, something else. We worked on a '07 Toyota Avalon. And I don't remember what we did to it, but we had the battery disconnected or something. Anyway, when he got it back, he said his moonroof wouldn't work. We hadn't worked on that, or we worked on something else. And when I did the research on it, it says until you've programmed all of the power windows so that they know top and bottom, the moonroof won't work. So we had to program all the power windows, and when we got all them programmed, the moonroof came online. Which is really weird, you know. I mean, but that's, you know, Identifix is really helpful in a situation like that. Dash lights quit working, you know, stuff like that. All these are the kind of problems you may have on that. Here's a Mustang story. I actually saw this happen. Girl came walking in here one day. She said, "Park my Mustang, light stays on all the time." One of the segments like that is on all the time. It's going to kill my battery. And it was the bright one, you know, the stoplight / turn signal one. And she didn't have those sequential lights either. She just had the ones that blink, you know. But look at this right here. This segment is on all the time. So what strikes you about that schematic? See this here? Lamp 2, lamp 1. See that? There's lamp 2 and lamp 1. Now we'll be talking about these two right here. Okay. You notice this? They're coming out of there on different wires. They did that so that whenever they decided to let it sequentially flash, this box would be able to handle that. Back in the day, I remember in the late 60s, you know, they had some of these Cougars that had them sequential turn signals, Thunderbirds in the mid 60s, stuff like that. They had a little box in the trunk that was only there for that, and had some relays and some crude electronics in it. And when it went bad, everybody just bypassed it and made the lights flash normally because they didn't want to pay the big bucks for that. But anyway, so what do you think we need to do about that? Your reflash would have took care of it. But at the time, what I told her, I says, why don't we just go ahead and take the bulb out of this one? Because it's going all the way to that box up there, and that box has got it turned on. She said, well, I guess I'll have to, and I found out it was going to be like $400, you know, to buy the part and all that. She said, I guess I need to start saving money for that. And I says, what? You're going to pay $400 to make that one light work? I would let that sucker stay out before I'd pay $400 to get that one light working, you know what I mean? All right, Nissan Intelligent Power Distribution Module. That's what they look like right there. The IPDM works on the same basic principle as the Ford Junction Box. The only serviceable parts are the fuses, except where certain TSBs allow you to change the ECM relay, but that requires a special tool. Looks like you ought to be able to just snatch them out of there, don't it? Now, you can, but if you push them back in there, it may not work right ever again. Look what you bought. Don't try to remove any of the other relays, even though it looks like you can. Now, this is on these Nissans. Always check for TSBs. If a reflash won't fix the PDM, you fix that. All right? That's what the tool looks like. See that right there? There's a guide plate, and you got to. This is actually from Nissan. Required special tool J50389, and you see how you put it in there, and it hooks around that relay, and it pulls it absolutely perfectly straight out of there. And you can make that happen. Make sure you use that to extract the relay. That's not negotiable. All right. So here we're going to have symptoms of one of those. Any or all of them may happen. Sputtering, loss of power, warning lights, sputtering, loss of power would be that relay. Warning lights, flashing illuminated bulb without code, start and stall, no start, stalls while driving. These problems go with me. This kind of problem go back to the fairly common happening at fuse box. And so you got a clamping diode right here in that ECM relay instead of a little resistor. The clamping diode is there so that when you de-energize the relay, the collapse of that magnetic field doesn't create a high voltage spark that goes screaming back into the PCM and makes it go bleh. You know, I've actually seen that kind of thing happen when there wasn't a clamping diode in play. You just put any relay in there that doesn't have a clamping diode in it, you may be buying a PCM. All right, Chrysler's totally integrated power module, that's what it looks like. It's got serviceable fuses and solid state switching, but no relays you can change. They're all built in there. Some of this they got some little things in those Chryslers that look like capacitors. It's actually like if there's a short, it'll actually open that circuit, and when it cools off, it'll close it back up again. It doesn't have any moving part. No start first time, no start ever, start and stall. These are some of the symptoms. Fuel pumps that run all the time, stalling. Always look for TSBs when you're working on late model Chrysler vehicles that have these symptoms. See that? No start for, in other words, they may try to start it and have to start it again. Now, IATN or Identifix are crucial tools. Know how to use a multimeter. Know how to use a scope. Understand how to diagnose normal electrical faults. Know how to use a professional grade scan tool. And know how to read schematics. Don't try to guess your way to a fix on any late model vehicle. Get really familiar with power and ground distribution schematics and look for commonalities. And what the deal is, if you've got something, there was a little trainer car that I used to have out there. I actually gave it to Adam, took it over to Elba. It was a little Dodge Neon, or Plymouth Neon, not a Dodge. And there was one ground wire that you could see, well, it was like two ground wires right there above the driver's side headlight. And I could take both of those ground wires off and put them down there where you couldn't see them. And that light wouldn't be off, it would be dim. The car wouldn't start, the scan tool wouldn't talk, and the wipers would run all the time. So if you turn the car on, the wipers would come on, the car wouldn't start, and one headlight would be dim. All because of them two little ground wires being disconnected. Well, you can have a disconnected ground and have all kinds of screwy problems. Or, let's say you turn on one thing and something else comes on instead of what you turned on. Like if, let's say you turn on your turn signals and something else comes on. You know what I mean? You're basically looking for ground problems. And if you've got something that's, you know, you always want to see, what else is not working? This isn't working, but is there anything else that ain't working? If there's anything else without working, you might say, well, this isn't working, but that's not working, and that's not working. Let's see if these have anything in common. You might find out some yo-yo left a connector unplugged. It's feeding all three of them. See what I mean? Now, you don't want to beat your head against the wall working and working and working and working when you could have gone over and click. You know, like really good mechanics will know exactly, yes, they'll either know the vehicle well enough to where they'll know which connector to look at, or they'll know how to go find it in the book. And that's really important too. All right. Before starting a parasitic draw test, close the doors, lock them with a key fob. If the hood's open, be sure to close the latch with a screwdriver. Be sure the under hood lamps are out. Move the keys at least 10 feet away from the car. Make sure any Bluetooth device such as a smartphone or Bluetooth headset's removed from the vehicle. Wait a few minutes for all the modules to go to sleep. That's when you're doing a parasitic draw test. Really important. Lock them with the key fob. See, because you don't want everything to say that. We had a Mustang out there though one day, 2010 model. He said battery's going dead on it overnight. And so on that particular one, I disconnected the battery and put a little, you know, one of our little yellow meters in between the battery terminal and the post I took it off of, and it was pulling 2 or 3 amps. And I said, walk away. We walked away for an hour, came back, all the draw was gone, and we did further check and found out she needed a battery. That's all she needed. And so you could actually work yourself into the ground going wacky about that kind of stuff. Before starting a parasitic draw test, don't waste time playing 8-ball pool on your phone. Go do something else while you're doing that waiting game. You know what I mean? You're not going to make any money standing around a shop like this. You know that. And also, you won't get all your worksheets done in here drifting from job to job, just talking to the people that do interesting stuff. You're actually supposed to turn in some of your own sheets, having legitimately done the work, right? Go to work making money on another vehicle during that time and return when that job is done. All right, common mistakes and oversights. Having the Toyota Smart Key in or near the car will wake up modules. All right, that's why Toyota says make sure the Smart Key is at least 10 feet from the vehicle in search of parasitic drain. Now, some of those hybrid vehicles will start the motor if the battery starts getting too low. If you got it up in the air and you got the oil changed, or you got the oil drained out of it, and it decides to start the engine because you left that thing in there, that'd be pretty bad, wouldn't it? You gotta understand all that. If a Bluetooth connected device is connected to the hands-free link on a Honda, the Bluetooth device may continue to have communication with the module. Take smartphones and Bluetooth devices out of the vehicle area to eliminate the possibility of them waking up a module. Now, it's not good to pull fuses out without knowing what they feed, so there are all these modules. You know, they charge up and it costs you a bunch of time and all that. Know which fuse feed modules, because when you unplug one of those fuses and reinsert it, you may see a sudden new draw that wasn't there before. So you'll have to take a break, lose time while you wait for it to go to sleep. You can also use, and I can't remember if this presentation, not a heat gun. I mean, I'm not a heat gun, but a FLIR camera, you know, forward-looking infrared camera. You can measure voltage drop across fuses to find parasitic drain. Put your meter on the lowest setting, and you can go across each one of those fuses with your meter, just like you see this one hooked up. And you're going to find one, if you find one of those fuses drawing, you know, that's got voltage drop, because you're going to have voltage drop anywhere you got any kind of a connection. That's why you got to have a meter set real low. Quick voltage drop test, set it on 2 volts. Now sometimes you can find a parasitic draw really quick that way, and the amount of voltage drop is really small. So you got to be looking at millivolts rather than volts. All right, a measurement under 30 millivolts isn't a problem, and the amount of voltage drop may vary depending on the type of fuse and the position. So you're setting it way down here, you know. All right, so circuit breakers and stuff. Eliminate your non-module feeding fuses before you start on the one and the fuses that don't give you access to their innards. And see, there's your little, yeah, that's the picture I took. We were working on a F-150 or something when I took this picture here. See the hot fuses? Like if it's been sitting there all night, or it's been sitting there like 3 or 4 hours and the battery's going down and nobody's been around and nobody's opened the door, and but you got the hood up and you pop that cover open, and I shoot that thing with my forward-looking infrared camera and I see a bunch of warm places, that's a really good place to look. See what I mean? All right, every connection's got some resistance, and where there's resistance, there's heat. And it'll catch a heat signature you can't feel with your hand. All right, here we go. A vehicle comes in with a complaint that the instrument lamps illuminate when the brake pedal is depressed. Technician A says the wiring under the dash near the brake lamp switch is likely to be shorted. Technician B says a bad stop tail lamp bulb is probably the cause. Who's right about that? Really? That's going to be B. Inside that bulb, if those wires are touching, and I've seen that happen more than once. See, when you mash the brake lights come on, and if those filaments are shorted, the dash lights are actually fed on the same circuit that the tail lights are, and it'll backfeed through the tail lights, and it'll make that come on. Now I've seen people come there and say, "Hey, I got a problem here," and I say, "Well, just pull all the bulbs out and see if the problem goes away. And if you do, you got a bad bulb." And it used to be more common than it is now. Now, technician B has the best handle on it. This right here is what the bulbs are made like. See that? This is from your tail lamp. This is your stop turn lamp. You see, this is grounded right here. See how that's done? All right, now look at that. If that gets shorted, it'll backfeed. And it'll make your dash lights come on when you hit your brake. Ta-da! That was a quickie, wasn't it? All right. Okay, y'all were trying to turn into a skeleton, weren't you?
Oh, my hand.